I am F19, and my parents' second child. I have 3 brothers, 21, 13, and 7, and a sister, 16. We grew up poor, and our parents were often dependent on financial help from relatives, friends, etc. for raising us. This is because even though my dad has a mediocre job and my mom doesn't work, they just kept on popping out one kid after another. My parents are very religious and believe that children are a gift from God. Personally, I think that's total BS. My parents' reproductive choices wouldn't bother me if it hadn't caused mine and my siblings' lives to turn to shit. While growing up, we never had new clothes or toys. We had to accept handouts from family members who were better off. We never went out or did anything fun. To top it off, we were well aware that the rest of the family looked down on us for constantly asking for handouts. Now, my older brother and I have managed to get into good colleges and are looking forward to a future that would be better than our parents' lives. He and I were staying at our parents' place for a while due to the COVID-19 lockdown. One morning, my parents called all 5 of us into the living room. Mom said she had great news. The smile that was forming on my face died a quick death when she said, "We're pregnant." I lost my temper. I asked them how they could be so stupid and irresponsible. Do they not have enough financial troubles already that they have to bring in another mouth to feed? My older brother tried to calm me down, but I was livid. After a lifetime of scarcity because of my parents' stupidity, they still hadn't learned their lesson. I asked them how they planned to provide for the kid. My dad told me I would have to give up the money our great-uncle had left me. He had left all 5 of us some money which only we could access when we turned 18. I said hell no. That money would help pay for my college expenses. He called me selfish for not being there for family. I told them if they couldn't provide for the kid, they should get an abortion. My mom started crying and called me a heartless monster. Dad told me he was disgusted with me. I told them there was no way I was going to pay for their stupidity, and the only thing I would be willing to pay for is a termination. What I was really worried about was my siblings' lives getting even worse. My older brother and I have escaped our parents' clutches, but the others, especially my younger sister, will be expected to help take care of this baby. No teenager deserves to have their adolescence ruined by diapers a screaming baby. I know what it's like, as I had to go through that. It was expected of me to be an unpaid nanny to my younger brothers and sister. My older brother could go out with his friends and have fun, but I had to stay home and help give baths and feed the toddlers. I decided to get some family members involved so they could talk some sense into my parents. I called my mom's maternal cousin. She's one of my favorite people. When I told her that mom and dad were having another kid, she reacted with, "What? Again?" I told her everything and how they expected me to hand over my inheritance. She said she was going to speak to my parents and told me not to sign over anything. I promised her I wouldn't. Of course I won't. I also called 2 of my first cousins, one of whom is an accountant, so she could explain to my parents how much of a financial liability this baby is going to be and try to convince them to either abort or give it up for adoption. I moved out of my parents' home a few days ago. I was only going to stay there till the lockdown was relaxed, but I just can't bear to listen to my mom's nagging about how this baby is a blessing and that I want to kill it. I've moved into a friend's basement for a minimal rent. My mom's cousin paid them a visit about a week ago and tried to tell them they weren't doing this child any favors by bringing it into a life of poverty. My mom was very rude to my aunt and told her that a woman who chose to remain barren will never understand a mother's love. My aunt never wanted kids, nor had any, one of the reasons she's my fave. My dad told her to get out. Aunt told me there was nothing she could do, but she did try. I didn't blame her. The cousin tried to explain the economic impact this kid would have, and my mom cried about how everyone was trying to take away her baby. What the fuck? The intervention didn't do shit. So now I've decided to cut contact with my parents. I just can't watch my family slide further and further into a hellhole. I'll be maintaining contact with my sister, 16, just to make sure my parents can't brainwash her. My older brother is going to stay in touch with all of them, which is a good thing as he can act as a link between me and the other siblings if my parents ever forbid them from talking to me. Otherwise, I'm done with these people. Edit. I want to thank all of you for your kind and supportive comments and for the awards as well. Update. Yesterday afternoon, I got a call from my older brother. He told me that my mom has miscarried. This is hardly surprising as she's in her 40s. I felt a huge wave of relief wash over me. My siblings' lives would not be worsened by my parents' insistence on adding another mouth to feed on an already tight budget. My sister would not be asked to give up her inheritance so they could have money for their new baby. My brother told me my mom had been crying, and while I did feel bad for her, I was still glad to hear about the miscarriage. I feel like we all dodged a huge bullet. Bro asked me to move back in for a while, to help comfort my mom. I told him I wasn't going to move in, because 1, my college would reopen in a few days, and 2, I'm done with all the family drama. However, I did agree to come visit my mom, if only out of courtesy. In the evening, I went over to my parents' place. I took chocolate chip muffins for my mom, which I know she likes. My sister greeted me at the door and told me mom had been in bed all day. After greeting my dad, I went into their bedroom. Mom was sitting up on the bed. I told her I was sorry about what happened and placed the muffins on the bedside table. She looked at me angrily, then threw the muffins at me. She screamed at me that she had lost her baby because of me. She said I had caused her stress, and it's what caused her to miscarry. She said I was probably glad her baby was dead, which is true, but of course I didn't point that out. She called me a witch and said I had wished this upon her. She was screaming so loudly, all my siblings and my dad came rushing to the bedroom. She yelled at me to get out. I did. I hugged my older brother and sister. Before I left, my Dee told me my mom was right, that my cruelty caused her to miscarry. I told him that was a grossly unfair accusation, and reminded him that at mom's age, it was quite common to miscarry. Then I walked out. I'm so done with my parents and their stupidity. I can only hope they won't try for another kid. My brother and his wife are heading towards a divorce. She has Ehlers-Danlos and has been bedridden for 5 years. I think it's all bullshit. Long one, but this is 15 years in the making. So my brother and his wife have been married for about 15 years. Ever since the beginning, I've always felt a little skeptical of her. She's a southern gal that likes to romanticize everything. Think a Facebook junkie that loves posting inspiring messages that are totally over the top. From the depths of my soul, I wish you all to find happiness in your life. I truly do. Never give up. Miracles are real. He has a plan. Etc. That sort of shit. She's a sweetheart though and doesn't have a malicious bone in her body, but she's the type of person who wishes she lived in a Hallmark movie. And she loves attention. Over the last 15 years, she's had one thing happen to her after another. About 10 years ago, she also started feeling chronic pain and was more and more reclusive, opting to spend most of the time we visited them in bed. Now she wasn't ignoring us, because we always made it a point to come up, and even would spend time in their room watching movies and just talking. But for the most part, she stayed in bed. Eventually, it was determined that she had something called POTS, and then later, Ehlers-Danlos. These were both pretty much self-diagnosed, and then confirmed by doctors. But since then, both of these afflictions have completely taken over her life. She started using a wheelchair, her body has deteriorated, she basically has 0 leg muscles, with a much larger upper body from eating terribly. She's had highly invasive procedures like spinal fusions, ports, and all sorts of other shit over the years. Everything is a miracle cure on Facebook, and she talks about how she's a girl boss. Guys! I did something today! I walked down the stairs to get a drink without my caregiver, is a typical post on Facebook. Of course, next week when I ask my brother how she's doing, she's had setbacks and is feeling worse than she was before. It's always 1 step forward and 3 steps back. What gets me is that these posts are obviously pity parties, but of course, she would never ask people to cry for her and talk about how terrible things are. No, that's not what the protagonist does in a Hallmark movie. They have stiff upper lips, they are courageous. They never complain and live life to the fullest, despite how terrible things are. So she makes a post with her sitting in her wheelchair or wearing a neck brace, and will say things like, "Guys, I just had the best day ever. I sat up." Normally, when I sit up, I get lightheaded and pass out, but today, thanks to my 3 physical therapists, I've been able to sit up. These are the little things people sometimes take for granted, but I just had to share. EDS can't stop me. Girl boss. Not today. So she gets 1 million likes and comments, saying how proud they are of her, and how she's an inspiration. We're all supposed to be so thrilled and excited, but all it really is a reminder that she's basically bedridden and should be pitied and lavished with attention. Thankfully, she hasn't tried to move into influencer status, and I honestly don't feel like she has financial incentives at heart. She simply craves the attention, the pity, and the status as being an inspiring role model for other people and being the main character of her own Hallmark movie. And I fucking can't stand it. I think this is all bullshit. I'm sure she's in pain, but that's what happens when your body deteriorates from not doing shit for 10 years. She tries to solve all her issues with pills and procedures, but doesn't do fuck all when it comes to actually working hard at rehabilitating her body. I know EDS is a real thing, but I've also read how commonly it's faked. Certain types can be genetically tested for. Of course, hers hasn't. Throughout all of this shit, my brother has been a fucking saint. He's never complained. Luckily, he owns a business that does well enough that nothing has led to financial issues, but it easily could have since nothing is covered by insurance. He's a very active and outgoing guy, so it kills me seeing him spend his entire young adult life basically being her caregiver. In the past year, however, he has reached a breaking point. He had a short-lived affair, realized life was slipping by, and immediately told her about it. She's forgiven him, and basically will say things like, "You can win me back, let's renew vows, get me another ring." All the bullshit you would see in a movie, of course. He knows deep down that he doesn't want to win her back, and has essentially been letting the relationship die over the past 9 months. He wants to take care of her financially, but wants out. He needs a life. Well, this past weekend, she finally sends a text saying that they are done, and the separation is moving forward. Oh, and what do you know? She has started making posts on Facebook about how she hasn't used her wheelchair in days. She can now walk a mile in a day when she couldn't walk 20 steps. Where the fuck was this 4 years ago when you maybe could have rehabilitated and lived an actual life? Where the fuck was this when my brother was wasting away his life, not traveling, not creating memories for his girls, having memories that he had growing up as a kid going on hikes and going to the beach? On top of all of this, they have 2 daughters. The older one is 12 and is having all sorts of other issues, including anorexia and self-harm. I love her, but I see this as a response to the bullshit that her mom has put her through her entire life. She has always been an attention-seeking kid. She is also very sweet, but unfortunately I believe that all of these cries for help wouldn't be happening if her own mother wasn't the way she is. I know this last part makes me an asshole, and I honestly have no ill will towards the daughter. I think what she is doing to herself is very serious, and I don't want to take it lightly. But she is also a very sheltered girl, and it's hard not to believe that the mother isn't the root cause. I'm so happy that my brother is finally going to be rid of this soon. Obviously, he plans to take care of her financially in perpetuity, and isn't planning to have any toxic fights over money or custody. He will do what's right. The only thing now is that I'm terrified that one of her stupid followers is going to share what happened, and he somehow becomes some viral villain that gets crucified by assholes who have no idea what the actual situation is.